story of Hanukkah?
The real story of Hanukkah is that there were a few loyal Jews left, loyal to the Torah, loyal to the land of Eretz Yisrael, loyal to the Jewish way of life and culture, loyal to the heritage of the Beis Hamikdash and everything that was sacred to the Jewish people for thousands of years from Avram Avinu on. And there was a plethora of rebel or traitorous Jews who joined with the Greek culture because they were afraid for their own safety and for their own welfare. And they said, we got to help stamp out Judaism and the loyal Jews to Torah and to the Beis Hamikdash by defiling the Beis Hamikdash, occupying the Beis Hamikdash, and putting Avodah Zorah and allowing Greek culture to rule over Eretz Yisrael. It's the wave of the future. The Greeks are here to stay. We got to get with the program, etc., etc. And so they stomped down on their own fellow Jews and participated with, collaborated with the Syrian Greeks in order to dominate and decimate Judaism and take over Eretz Yisrael and apply it to the Greek Empire, who they thought, again, would last forever, and they would therefore be on the cutting edge. Everything would be good for them. They'd be safe. They'd be wealthy. They'd enjoy life. The price tag was giving up Judaism, Torah Judaism, and specifically the Jewish laws like Shabbos and Bris Milah and Kashrut, things that identify the Jew as separate. Certain parts of Judaism they're going to be allowed to keep as like cultural things, like, I don't know, a sukkah or some cultural things, but things that threaten the Greeks' hegemony and their sovereignty and their cultural superiority were given short shrift, and they were ordered not to study Torah, not to learn or read the Torah. The morality laws were decimated by taking the Benos Yisrael, the daughters of Israel, on the first night of their marriage to the Greek overlords for prima noctur, and it was a terrible, terrible persecution, terrible oppression of the Jewish people in those days. Lasted for 50, 100 years, however long it lasted, until there were Jews in Eretz Yisrael, specifically the Kohanim, the Mattisyahu and his 5 Maccabee or Hashmonaim family, the 5 sons of Mattisyahu. They couldn't take it anymore. They said things can't go on as they are now. And we're gonna. There came a breaking point when they just said that we've had enough. Enough is enough, and life is not worth living if it's dealing with the ripping from us our freedom to worship Hashem and live a Torah life. In other words, they had put up with their political slavery and servitude. They had put up for over 100 years already with the losing of their control and their independence physically and politically. But the straw that broke the camel's back was the imposing upon them of idolatry. And so they had to flee from their Beis Hamikdash. Mattisyahu was very already, Mattisyahu Kohen Gadol had retired anyway because of his age, but even his sons couldn't stay in the Beis Hamikdash anymore because it was co-opted, taken away from them, and idolatry was being worshipped there. They were slaughtering pigs, chazirim, on the Mizbeach. And so one day, a contingent of Syrian Greeks marched through this town of Mattisyahu's town of Moadim. And they marched through and they gathered all the Jews to the center of town, and they said to them, listen, we are imposing upon on all the Jews in the countryside now, not just in Jerusalem anymore, but now all over the country, the last vestiges of the last loyal Jews. We want you to come out here and watch as we are going to have you worship Antiochus as the god of this region, our king, and Zeus and all the Olympian gods on Mount Olympus. And who will, they announced in the public square, who will now take this pig and slaughter it and worship it on the altar to Antiochus. And they set up an altar and they offered somebody to take the knife, slaughter the pig, and sacrifice it to the Greek god, to the king of Syria, Antiochus. And they had already had Jews ride on the horn of an ox in Hebrew, we no longer have any portion in the God of Israel. And they were doing everything they could to undermine Judaism and the loyal, the Jews who were still loyal to Torah and to God. And so Matisyahu was there because they were forced on penalty of death. Everyone had to show up for this spectacle and this desecration of God's name, public desecration of God's name. And there was a Jew in the crowd. There was a Jew in the crowd who had already converted to the Greek culture. He had even sewn over with pigskin his bris milah to put the orla back on, the foreskin back on. And he was with them in their naked games and their sport, and he had become a Greek. And he stepped forward to say, "I'll do it." And he was just about to take the knife from the captain of that guard, and just as the knife was transferring from his hand to the hand of the renegade Jew, Matisyahu said, "That's enough, that's it." He grabbed the knife, he ran into the circle, he grabbed the knife in mid handoff and stabbed the Jew and killed the Jew. And then they inspired all the people standing around to fall upon the contingent of Greek soldiers, and they decimated them, wiped them out, took their weapons, and headed to the hills. And Matisyahu and his sons had a rallying call, Mi kamocha be'elokim Hashem, who is like you among the gods? And the Moshe Rabbeinu's rallying call, Mila Hashem Elai, who is for Hashem, come to me. And they went up in the mountains, and they proceeded to start a renegade guerrilla warfare for the next 20, 30 years. There were losses, but pretty much they won every battle, but they lost. All 4 out of 5 of the sons of Matisyahu fell in different times during this war, but they were successful finally in fighting their way into Yerushalayim and up to Har HaBayis, to the Temple Mount, and they took back control of the Beis HaMikdash, and they took back cleansed it, rebuilt all the defiled structures and all the utensils and kalim, the vessels that were used, the altars that were defiled. They made new ones, and they made a new menorah, and they started to worship Hashem again and rededicate it. Chanukah means rededication. Chanukah Sabayas, the dedication of a house, and they rededicated it to Hashem, and it was a cause for great celebration. And they found this one tiny jar of oil. This one tiny jar of oil that was unseen and unheard of. It's a longer story to it. I won't say it now. They found it undefiled, and it lasted, as everyone knows, for 8 days instead of just 1 day. Now, the idea here, the miracle, is obvious. They were few in number. They didn't have any weapons, and they fell upon the mightiest empire that had ever been seen, and the mightiest army that had ever walked the face of the earth till that time. And with God's help, they vanquished them. But the real miracle, the miracle within the miracle, the nes b'toch hanes, was the fact that there were any Jews left loyal enough, courageous enough to stand up and try to do something, and not just give up hope and either convert or give in and cave in or run away from Eretz Yisrael. They didn't do that. They were willing to die for their belief. They didn't think they were going to win. They had no chance. They didn't expect a miracle. They didn't know Hashem was going to perform this great miracle. But the oil that lasted from 1 day to 8 days is a symbolic of what they did. Hashem took this one cruse of oil that they dedicated, that they didn't want to wait for the 7 days, 8 days it would take to get new oil, and therefore they decided, we'll light this one anyway. The pure oil will light. They could have used tamei oil. They could have used impure oil. But that impure oil would not have been the proper thing to do, even though Tumah Hutra B'tzibur, if everything's defiled or all the people are defiled, you're allowed to do the avodah in the Beis HaMikdash. But when there had been an interruption for however many years there had been, where the service of the Beis Hamikdash was not going on properly. So when you restart it, everything has to be in purity. So they said, we can't do it. And then when they found this one cruse of oil, they said, we don't have to wait anymore. We won't wait till the 8 days. We'll light this, and at least for one day we dedicated, and we'll have in another week after that we'll have the new oil to keep the services going. And by then we'll have all the kalim ready, all the altars and all the things for the service, and for the korbanos the sacrifices will be readied by then. And so they lit this light, and it lasted for 8 days, as we all know. And again, the miracle is this one cruse of oil. Hashem made it like it's the little cruse of oil that could. It overcame and conquered 8 days worth of light that it could only really go for one day. It was a miracle they found it anyway, so that's why we celebrated for 8 days, to commemorate the military war and to commemorate the giving of finding this oil and the burning of the oil. And the 8 days shows what they had accomplished in this war. That these few people, few in number, weak, they were Kohanim, they were not warriors by any means. There were very few warriors left in Israel ready to fight for Jewish causes, for the Jewish cause. And they were the priest class that never went to war. They were the ones that did the avoda and taught Torah, and they were scholars. They took it upon themselves, though, that the life was not worth living without the Torah, without Judaism, and they were willing to die for their beliefs, if need be. And the miracle of the oil signifies what their miracle was. That there was any of these Jews courageous enough to stand up and fight is what Hashem saw, and that's what God saw, and that's why He gave them the miracle that He gave them. Had they not stood up, He would not have liberated them. They would not have been a miracle. There would not have been a Hanukkah celebration all these 2,500 years later. It is the lesson applies today is because Eretz Yisrael is again under siege by the nations of the world and by Jews who are not loyal to our faith and to our cause and to the Torah, to our mission to sanctify God's name on earth. And we again need such a brave cadre of special Jews to stand up yet again in history in order to overcome these long odds, to win back our holy places and our right to implement Torah law in Eretz Yisrael as God wills it. And this is what is going to take another Hanukkah nace, another Hanukkah miracle to transpire. But that miracle will not come until there are Jews ready to stand up and risk it all, even if it looks bleak, and it does, that you would ever be able to stop the giving away of the whole West Bank for another Palestinian state, for the continuation of this death process that has been a scourge upon the Jewish consciousness and psyche and people for 20 years now. Over 20 years now. It is not. It's not going to happen unless Hashem has total rachmanis on us, mercy on us, until we show Hashem our willingness to fight, our willingness to stand up and go to the mat for Hashem's Torah. The Hanukkah is different than Purim. Purim, Haman, and the world threatened the lives of the Jews. And Hashem saw our tshuva and He came to the rescue. But when Torah is threatened in the world, when the Torah and the service in the Beis Hamikdash and everything that Judaism is sacred and stands for is threatened, Hashem waits for us to fight for Him, to show that He fights for us when we're threatened, when He's threatened, so to speak, when His law is threatened, when His name is threatened, when His honor is compromised and is being desecrated. He waits to see, are there Jews extant still in the world who are willing to stand up for Hashem. And then when He sees that happen, that's when He brings the Yeshua. That's when He makes His miracles, that the few vanquish the many and the weak vanquish the mighty. And that's what it's going to take. And so on this Hanukkah, which was the most significant event in 2,500 years ago that happened, the last significant event that happened, the Six-Day War in 1967, which gave us the potential for the Beis Hamikdash and gave us the potential for this kind of resurrection of the Jewish state and the revival of the Jewish people as a holy people, reminiscent of our patriarchs and David HaMelech and Moshe Rabbeinu. The Hechatim, that was the most significant event since the Maccabees of 2,500 years ago. But we're in sore straits now, dire straits now, that we are lacking the courage, seemingly, to continue what the Six-Day War started for us and began for us. And we've been slowly, by attrition, losing our grasp and hold on Eretz Yisrael, losing our ability to keep Torah, to make the Yeshua, the redemption process, the salvation of the Jewish people, continue the process where God is redeeming the Jewish people from this long exile of nearly 2,000 years. This is not happening. It seems to be all turning the other way and going back in reverse to the undoing of the redemption process. And Hashem is letting it happen without stopping it because he sees that we're not willing to rise up and stop it. Just like the Maccabees, the Hashmonaim defied the Greeks and the Jews who were on the Greek side in order to save Judaism and Torah and the Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash in those days. At this time, we need to do the same thing all over again. And until we do, we're going to see, unfortunately, God forbid, these reversals continue to happen. God forbid that it should ever get any worse. It's already bad enough. And as a result, the message of Hanukkah is that it calls upon us to realize that Judaism is not just singing and dancing all the time. It's not just keeping Shabbos and Kashrus all the time. It's not even just praying all the time or learning Torah all the time. There are times when Hashem requires us to do things that we would rather not do. Judaism doesn't preach violence, but nor does it shy away from it when violence is necessary. Violence, Rabbi Meir Kahana used to say, is not wanted, it's not appreciated, it's not looked forward to, but sometimes it's very necessary when evil is so prominent in the world and so overwhelming the good in the world. There's no other way to reverse it except by fighting, except by going to a willingness to put it all on the line and say no and defy the forces and powers that be in the world that are making it impossible for Jews to keep their Torah, to keep their land, to build their Beis HaMikdash, and have their true mission as Jews in the world to sanctify the will of God and to sanctify the name of God. That's what Judaism stands for. That's what the message of Hanukkah is about. And I wish you all a happy Hanukkah, and I hope everyone will think long and hard about this and find the courage within to emulate the Maccabees of old.